My name is Sam Levitt, and welcome back to another one of our Purdue Aviation LLC instructional videos. This is going to help anyone in a G1000 Cessna 172 Sierra model pre-flight a plane. So we're going to go and show you how our pre-flights are done here at Purdue Aviation. Follow me. So when we walk in the airport, we got to go get the plane, right? Before we start the pre-flight inspection, we're going to come over here to the front desk, and there's two things. The first thing we got to do is we got to fill out a frat. No, not a frat like a frat party. A frat where we go through every piece of information to make sure we're safe for the flight, right? We've got an I'm safe checklist. So the instructor is going to fill out their section. Typically everything's green for them as we adhere to strict rules here at Purdue Aviation. For you as a student, you go through the I'm safe checklist, as well as you can do your eating, your medical. Hopefully you have your medical by then, and then are you 90 days current for the flight? Well, since you're still a student pilot, this section doesn't apply to you. The next thing is for the solo, if you've had a dual flight within the preceding 30 days, right here, you want to make sure that's green. And then TCO. For you Part 141 kids out there, if you're with your instructor, your TCO is up to date, so that'll be green. And then the aircraft here at Purdue Aviation is always up to date. So we'll do that, your signature will go here, and you'll be good to go. All right, now once your frat's filled out, you're gonna go ahead and ask the front desk for the keys. Mary, can we possibly get the keys? Cool. Now she's gonna hand you the book. There may or may not be the keys in there, but the book is what has your pre-flight checklist in it. So let's go pre-flight the plane. Once you've made it out to the hangar, you're going to go to your plane. The plane that we're going to pre-flight today is November 652 Papa Alpha, and on the book or your dispatch, you'll figure out which plane you have. The first thing you're going to do, come this way, is to come to your door, and we want to work as efficiently as possible. So, like always, we got to make sure we go through our checklist. So, we go through our checklist, the first thing, certificate and documents. Don't forget that arrow. We got our airworthiness certificate and our registration, right? We got to make sure those are viewable to all occupants on board. The next thing is our operating handbook or operating limitations, and that'll be found in the POH, typically in the back of the back seat and the AFN, right? And then we're going to look for that weight and balance, which is the empty weight, basic weight, and the CG, which is also typically found in the POH. Once we check our documents, we're going to run through the checklist, right? The control lock we already removed. The magnetos, they're obviously off because the key's not in there. And the avionics bus 1 and bus 2 is off. We're going to check, make sure those circuit breakers are in. The alternate static air, we're going to check, make sure that's off. And then we bring on our battery, master, and alternator. Well, why is that? Because we have to record our Hobbs and tack. Now our tack time will show up here momentarily. Our Hobbs time, we can find it right here. Go ahead and write that down so we know how much time we log in this aircraft. Now as that screen comes on, it's important you don't press anything because that tack time is going to be right there. You check the fuel quantity gauges, which are right here, but we know we're going to check the fuel visually. Now we got a low fuel annunciator light. We got to make sure that's off, right? We don't see any annunciator, oil pressure, and vacuum annunciator right here like they should be. Avionics bus 1 and 2, we're going to cycle it to see if we hear those avionic fans come on. You ready? There goes that fan, we'll turn it off. And there goes that fan, and we'll turn it off. Good. Then the pitot heat, we're going to go on and we're going to check and make sure those volts, which they do change, and we'll turn that back off. And then flaps extend because our flaps are electric. We've got to have the master on for that to extend, and then we can turn the master battery off. Okay, so now that we've done the pre-flight for the interior of the aircraft, we want to be efficient, right? As pilots, we want to be efficient and follow the checklist. And you'll see momentarily when we do the walk-around, we have to check the lights. But we don't want to leave that battery running, right? And so here's how we can be efficient. What we're going to do, we're going to switch the battery and master back on. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn on the lights, the nav, the landing, and the strobe. I'm not going to turn on because we're in a hangar. If we're in a hangar, it's proper etiquette to not leave those strobes running because we don't want to blind other people. We'll always make sure that they work though. So what we can do, we can turn on really quick, look left, look right. We can note that they're on and we'll turn it off. So like I said, we want to be efficient, right? We've got that battery on, so let's check to make sure those lights are working. Landing lights working. If you come over here, the nav light, right? If you come this way, you'll see that beacon is working. We've got our right nav light, and then we've got our other landing light. There's no light in the front of the aircraft. And so now that we've checked to make sure all the lights work, we can go ahead and turn the lights off first, and then the master battery. So we'll go ahead and do that. Lights off first, remember, leave that beacon on as per the checklist. And there you go. Now that the pre-flight interior is done as per the checklist, we have an external checklist, right? We want to take the exterior checklist out. At Purdue Aviation, we've got a separate checklist for the exterior. Then we can put this back, right? We want to have some hands available. So we'll put the book back inside the plane, and we'll start with the exterior checklist starting on the empennage. The empennage is right here, right? It's this whole back portion. It starts right over here. This is our empennage, right? But first we gotta check and make sure that our door is locked, right? Our cargo door is locked. It's nice and flush. Sometimes it could be open like this. You wanna make sure it's nice and shut. You click that in to lock it. And then we're gonna go along our control surfaces here, our surfaces of the empennage, and we wanna check that there's no visible cracks or dents. We then have our horizontal stabilizer, right? We want to make sure the same thing, no cracks, no dents, and this is per the checklist, just for demonstration purposes right now. I'm just showing you visually. Follow along with the checklist on your own. We'll go ahead, and this is our elevator. We're going to check for full deflection, as well as we don't want to hear any creaks and we don't want to hear any cracks, snapping. We're looking along here. You want to see your static wicks. Make sure that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 among the whole rear of the aircraft. And this is one of the most important parts of the Cessna 172 pre-flight, because I don't want to see you touching this. This right here is your manual trim tab. It is something that maintenance takes care of for your rudder, right? Some aircrafts we know have a rudder that you can control inside the cockpit, but here maintenance takes care of it, right? It's almost like tinfoil. It's very sensitive. So if you're going to test the rudder, make sure you're holding up here for movement, right? Same thing, full deflection, and make sure you don't hear any cracks, squeaks. Look up here. I want you to look at these antennas and think the shape V for VOR, right? These are your VOR antennas. We'll then come along this way. We know this side of the elevator is connected to the other side, right? So the only thing we're looking for different over here is nothing but our elevator trim tab. Notice I said rudder trim tab. Well, what's different? This is something that is ground adjustable. Maintenance touches that. This right here is what we can control in the cockpit, right? The elevator trim tab is something that we can control manually from the cockpit. So we're making sure that all is secure, it's all nice, all the bolts are together. We've got a little bit of frigidity to it, and we'll go ahead and we'll walk around here and inspect the other side of our horizontal stabilizer. Once again, no cracks. I said horizontal stabilizer, vertical stabilizer, right? Vertical stabilizer, rudder in the back, right? It's important in our pre-flight we also start to learn the names of the parts of our aircraft. So let's move along here. We're coming back to the other side of the empennage, and if you follow along in the checklist, it'll say to note the ELT antenna. That's this guy right here. So we'll make sure that's there, all attached, no dents, and we'll come along to the first side of our wing. The first thing we're going to encounter is our flaps. You want to make sure that it's nice and connected with very little movement, right? The flaps are down. You want to make sure that they're going to stay in place. The next part is our aileron, right? Same thing like we did with the elevator. We want to make sure full deflection in both ways with no weird creaks or cracks or no dents or anything. And if you come along this side, I want you to take a look at something for me. If you look at the elevator, you're going to see 1, 2, 3 weight bars. You always want to make sure there's 3. Then we'll look along under the wings, same thing, no dents, no cracks, and then we get to our wingtip, right? We want to make sure our wingtip is in good condition. We want to make sure our lights are there, right? And if you're wondering what this little guy is right here, well, this is so if you're sitting inside the cockpit, you're able to see and make sure that your nav lights, your position lights, it'll reflect that color, right? So what side do we know the right side is? We know that the right side is green. So if all is working, we'll see green from inside the cockpit to confirm that that light is working. Coming along, we've got our leading edge of our wing. We've got the leading edge, and then we've got our stall warning, right? We've got our stall warning right here. We want to make sure that's there. And then we want to make sure our wing strut has no cracks, no dents, no damages. And if you take a look at the checklist, it's going to say this is where you sump the wings. Now, remember I said we want efficiency and checklist following. It doesn't really make sense to sump the wings and hold the sump and walk around, right? So the order of efficiency I want to do, we go and we do the pre-flight with inside the cockpit, then we check the lights and we go around the airplane, make sure the lights are working, turn off the master battery to preserve the power, follow your checklist on the exterior walk around with everything other than fuel, because we can do that at the end. So, like I said, we'll skip the part of the checklist where it says sump the wings and check the fuel quantity. So we'll go ahead, wing strut. If you come over here to the landing gear strut, you'll once again want to check for no cracks and damages. And when it comes to checking for the tire, we want to make sure there's no bald spots, it's nice and inflated. And if you look at the brake pads as well, you want to make sure that one, there's nothing cracked, but also that there's no red fluid on the ground. Because we know the only hydraulics we have in this aircraft are our brakes. Our brakes would use a red hydraulic fluid. And if you see red hydraulic fluid on the ground, I would talk to maintenance about that. So once we're done with the right wing, we'll come here to our cowling. We want to make sure our cowling is free of dents, and we get to our oil. To open the oil, we push in, that oil cooler will come open, or the oil door will come open, and we'll untwist that. And what we want to see is at least 6 quarts. Okay, so once you've confirmed that you have at least 6 quarts, you'll put this dipstick back in and you'll tighten it, but not too tight. Why? Because as the airplane heats up, so does our engine. And we know when things heat up, in the most basic way of putting it, as things heat up, they expand. And so it's going to tighten itself mechanically throughout the flight. So you want to make sure it's just tight enough to where you don't have to apply a force. So we'll make sure that's shut and we'll close it. Now, what if it wasn't at 6 quarts? What you'll do is you'll go to line office and you'll have line office get you the oil specified for the certain aircraft, like this one, and they'll log it and they'll either come out and do it with you or your instructor knows how to do it. So going past the oil, we get to our spinner and our prop, right? So this is our prop. And this is our spinner, right? We're looking free of cracks, nice smooth surfaces, and we're coming in here, right? We're looking inside of our cowling, and we're making sure there's no cracks on our cylinders. We're making sure it's free of squirrels, animals, leaves, anything can blow in. And this guy right here, I don't know if you can see it, is our alternator belt, right? This is what charges our battery. So if it snaps, that won't be good. So we're applying a little bit of pressure, making sure the belt is nice and secure. We're then checking to make sure our air filter is free of any blockages, and we're looking down below at our exhaust, no cracks, no black smoke, or nothing is in the way of our cowling. And as we approach the other side of our cowling, we then get under and we look at the wheels. Same thing as with the other one. We want to make sure that there are no bald spots, it's nice and inflated. And the strut, my rule of thumb, is at least 3 fingers length, right? We want to make sure that strut has some room in between the wheel and the bottom of the aircraft nose. So another thing too to point out while we're under there, there's a little bit of oil on the ground, right? Well, a little bit is okay. Why? Because if you take a look right here, this is an oil breather. Well, how do you learn things if you don't know them? You ask maintenance, right? I've had to learn things before, and when I asked maintenance, they told me, yeah, that's there to breathe out the excess oil, right? That's very normal. If you see a large pool of oil, maybe I would reach out to maintenance and figure out what's going on. But lastly, in the front of our cowling, this is where if we need external power, I wouldn't worry about this. Your instructor will help you out in the event that you do need external power. And then we come over to this side. Very similarly to the right wing, we've got all the similar inspections, just a few more things. This is our pitot tube. If there's a cover on it, it'll be a cover like this. You just go ahead and remove it and take it out. We want to make sure this is clear, there's no ice on it, there's nothing blocking that. Another thing different about this side of the aircraft, where on the left side of the aircraft is right here. This is your static port. We want to make sure that nothing is blocking it, but you don't want to touch this. It's very sensitive and the little cells and dirt from your skin can block it. Same thing under the wing, except we've got a little fuel vent over here, right? We want to make sure that's clear because there are occasions where it could be leaking. It's just because sometimes the tanks can get a little bit too full. So that's completely normal. We just want to make sure, once again, a huge theme is no cracks, no damages, no dents, and nothing blocking holes, right? That's another one of the things that we want to make sure is not blocked. We inspect the leading edge, the wingtip again, the same way. Same thing with the aileron over here, full deflection, making sure the weight bars are there. Coming over to the flaps, just like we did on the other side, free of movement. So now that we have finished the walk around, the last thing on the checklist is fuel. So the fuel sump, most flight schools typically keep the fuel sump in the back seat, and it looks something like this. This is where Purdue Aviation keeps ours, in the back seat in the little cup holder. Now, what color is aviation fuel? Well, we know in our ground school, and from actually flying, aviation fuel is blue. Now on the Cessna 172 Sierra model, there's 5 fuel sumps under each wing. And we're going to sump all 5 and make sure we see the color blue, right? So far, I see the color blue. Now, what else are we checking for when we sump the fuel? Well, if you've cooked before, you know that when you mix water and oil, they separate. Well, fuel is the same thing. It's a different kind of density. So if the fuel has water in it, we'll see some bubbles, or we'll see the water separate, right? Our airplane does not run on water. So we want to make sure that there's no other dirt, debris, or water in there. And then what we can do, we can come to this side of the aircraft, and you can step up just like we have down there. We step up on those surfaces, and we can put the fuel that we just sumped and tested to be all right back into the fuel tanks. We open up the tab just like this, and we can go ahead and we can pour the fuel back into the tank. Now, we're checking a couple things here. We're checking first the fuel level, right? If you look in the fuel tank, you'll be able to see where the level is. If it's to the top, we know that we're full. That is how you see how much fuel you have in your plane, right? We know that we have gravity-fed tanks, and so our fuel quantity indicators in the cockpit aren't always reliable. So it's very important as the pilot in command of your aircraft to check the fuel level visually before every flight. So then what we do, we go ahead and we secure the fuel vent back in just like this, and we do the exact same thing on the other side. So after we've sumped the left wing and the right wing, we've checked the fuel quantity. Remember, there's 5 on each wing. There are 3 sumps under the nose of the Cessna 172 Sierra. And where they are, the first one is right here, so we're going to sump that. And then there's another one right here. We're going to sump that one. And the last one is right here. So 1, 2, 3. And then we'll go ahead, we'll inspect the fuel, and we can throw it back into either of the tanks. All right. We've sumped the fuel, we've checked the fuel quantity, we've looked under the nose, we've checked the fuel there. Another thing to note really quick, you can see I did not set the parking brake or remove the chocks. And that is because we're inside the hangar. Remember, sometimes your flight school will hangar the aircraft. And in that event, what we will do is we'll make sure that it's not chocked, because maintenance guys or the line guys are going to roll the plane out when you're ready to go. If you are outside, it is critical you remember to set the parking brake when you remove the chock, as per the checklist. And speaking of the checklist, to round out everything I talked about today with the pre-flight with efficiency, it's checklist usage. Now you may say, Sam, I saw you walking around the plane without the checklist. Well, that's 2 reasons. 1, as a flight instructor, I'm highly proficient. But number 2, what we do after every checklist item, I've completed the walk around, I've completed the fuel, I've completed the light check, we do and verify. It's called the do verify method. And after we've completed all that, I look here and I make sure I've done everything. I've checked and inspected the surfaces of the aircraft. I've checked the lights. I've checked the fuel, right? If you forget to check the lights, you get back in the plane, you look at the checklist and you see, oh wait, I forgot to check the lights. That is why we do and verify. So to conclude, the pre-flight inspection is a pilot in command's job to deem the airplane airworthy. This is the final act the pilot can do to make sure the aircraft is airworthy. So it's important you do a thorough pre-flight inspection, especially when you are the first flight of the day. That is very important because it hasn't flown since the day before. You want to make sure the oil's where it should be, the fuel's topped off. You want to make sure there's no dent. You want to make sure the wheels are still on the plane. And most importantly, follow the checklist. Enjoy the flight and enjoy the rest of your training. And thank you again for joining me. This lesson will be very helpful if you're just starting out your flight career as well as starting out your private pilot training. If you have any questions, consult your CFI, drop any questions in the comments below. You can look at your personal checklist for the airplane as well as anything from Cessna themselves. Once again, my name is Sam Levitt. I'm a CFI here at Purdue Aviation LLC in West Lafayette, Indiana. If you want to start your flight training today, go ahead, go to their website, give them a call, and I look forward to seeing you here soon, maybe.